Welcome to Founder Stories, where we dive into the journeys of cybersecurity leaders, from first-time founders to industry veterans. Each story reveals the passion, resilience, and problem-solving spirit that drives innovation forward. Whether it's tackling financial challenges, conquering regulations, or building great company culture, these founders have insights and advice that inspire. Let's hear their stories. Howdy, folks, and welcome to Founder Stories TV, the only show where we interview cybersecurity founders and learn all about their trials, their tribulations, and everything else they go through. With me today is Benny Lakunishok from Zero Networks. Benny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, and thanks for having me.
I love it. I love it. All right, so we can dive straight in if you'd like, and I've got a series of questions for you, just different things about being a founder. Are you good with that?
Sure.
All right. First question. What is an obstacle that you faced as you became a founder that you could not have predicted? Something that surprised you that you had to overcome?
First of all, there are many obstacles that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and every few months there's a different challenge as the company grows. I would say the main one, it's also one of the first ones, is the understanding how important it is to have the right people, but with a capital R. Mm-hmm. And if it's not that, you have to let go very quickly. If not, it will hold you back rather than move you forward.
So the right people is key. And I guess as you got started, you sort of had to figure out who the roles were and what the different things were. Because I know the stereotype is when you start as a founder that you're putting in 16-hour days yourself, right? How true is that stereotype? How much were you finding yourself before you got these right people hired? How bad was it for you, and how bad is it still in terms of the hours you're putting in?
First of all, it's bad. There's nothing else. Everything in life is on hold. And even if you find the right people in the beginning, and even more because you're growing fast, and like the surface of the ball that is your company is just growing, even if you're adding the people, there's still more to do than the people you add can do. So you're always, and you're setting yourself back. If everything is perfect, you're setting yourself back, and you just need to work more so that the company goes faster. And that's best case scenario. So Typically in the beginning, even if you add the right people, you will need to work a lot more than you think.
Okay.
And when I say beginning, it can be multiple years beginning, not just, the first year.
So how often do you find yourself to sort of be the limiting factor, where it's like you're in the loop and have to be in the loop. And even if you're hiring all the right people, like, oh no, it's coming to me and I have to be the one to deal with this. Like, how often does that come up?
Nowadays, it's not as like, this is like me speaking 5 years after. It's no longer the case, which is great. It's a very different experience now than it was in the first few years, where I'm the limiting factor. Although you can always be the limiting factor, you can always do more, right? Like, that's also a question. But there's also has to be some balance to sleep, to rest, to do something even small to yourself so that you can be still energetic in the next day as much as possible. And nowadays, it's not as much. Back in the day, it's literally all the time.
All right. So I ask a lot of founders, what are your words of encouragement to bring people on and say, hey, you should be a founder too. I want to hear your words of discouragement. What is the warning? Like, hey, before you become a founder, you might want to X. What's your words of discouragement?
I'll tell it to you differently. In Israel, where I'm from, there's a lot of innovation and a lot of stuff is happening. So there's also a lot of founders. And I get to cross by many, many people, some that want to be founders. And I always start with, don't. I wish it on my enemies to be a founder. And I can tell you many, many things. The main one is that most likely you will fail. And most likely the first few years, even if you fail or succeed, are going to be complete shit. You're going to need to invest a lot of time. It's extremely difficult. Some of the people that are there in the beginning with you, you probably won't speak to after. Like, there's just and it also depends on your family situation. I was single luckily before I started this, but
Mm-hmm.
at least statistically, if you are in a relationship, there's a very high probability that relationship will end. This is just statistically, not me speaking. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it's very impactful on your life. So don't do it. Like literally, that is my recommendation.
Wow. All right. Now, that being said, as you went along your journey, I can't help but feel some of the bad stuff you figured out ways to overcome, right? So what are some of the challenges you faced that you were able to overcome? What were the things that you kind of learned the hard way? Like what would you do differently versus what you did to have a better outcome?
Interesting question. The first one is to find the right people and don't compromise. Wait a
Mm-hmm.
few months till you find the fine person and don't compromise. And it's from the co-founder itself all the way down to the people that are doing the work, to people that need to manage people doing the work. It doesn't matter. It needs to be top-notch people that fit to your values and the way you feel intuitively in your gut. This is how it needs to be handled. And if that's being done not how you feel that needs to be handled, it's going to explode,
Mm.
regardless if it's going to succeed or not. Now, sometimes maybe it succeeds, most of the time it doesn't, by the way. So that's the main thing. And then there are many, many small things in terms of understanding really what's important or what's urgent. Many times you feel something is, but it's not, and how to prioritize with yourself or find the right people that you can converse very logically and in a cold way. Do we do that now or not? And there's so many, like, because we're used to in life just acting. Okay, obviously I want to do something or don't want to do something. And here you need to stop yourself and think, because some of these are rat holes that will just sink time and not
Yeah.
necessarily improve where you are and what you need to achieve when you are at tier 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even later. There's a lot of prioritization that needs to be done, and it's very difficult to do.
So staying on mission versus chasing rabbits all across the field.
Yeah, it sounds like trivial, but when
Mm-hmm.
you're in the weeds and there's so much stuff happening, it is very untrivial.
I get that. I get that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I can see where distraction becomes one of your biggest enemies, right?
Yeah, it's not
So,
just distraction of time, it's also distraction of outcome that you need
mm,
to have.
I get that. I get that. So that kind of ties into this question. It's easy to get distracted by all the possibility, right? It's also easy to want to do all the things. And I think this is why most startups, everybody seems to wear multiple hats, right? Like you might be the CISO involved in product, or you might be the CTO, but also supervising the SEs, or you might be, like everyone wears lots and lots of hats. Is that kind of in alignment with what you see? Is that what you want? Do you look for leaders who can do that?
Yeah.
What leader do you bring on next? How do you fit them in? Do you look at each leader having to wear multiple hats? Do you start to focus in and say you are strictly going to be a CRO? Like what's that hiring strategy like for leadership?
Yeah. So there's like a lot. That's a very broad set of questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll try to like answer them as I heard them or like as it made sense in my head. I'll
Okay.
start with yes. In the beginning, right? There's you need to wear a lot of hats. You need to do more than you are typically doing. Um, it's very hard to give a guideline on when to recruit for these functions people that can own them instead of you. Generally speaking, you need to do it earlier than you think, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do see the opposite. People think I need a VP of marketing. No, you don't, dumbass. You don't have a product yet. Have a product, make sure that you can sell it 10 times, that it's working, because selling 10 times, it's not just the act of selling. It means that there are people also hopefully selling to people that you don't know, who are not your friends, or
Yeah.
like, just random prospects that you said, this is what I can do. they validated that you can do it, they liked it, and they voted with their wallet, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Market
That
validation.
signals many things, and it also sounds trivial, but it's not. There's so many things that need to evolve in the product for the 10 to magic number, let's say, to happen, and just there's stuff. Also, as you're doing founder-led sales, those will be different than the first 10 that are without the founder. And even then, there's evolutions of things, both product and processes, that needs to happen, and supporting things in the company for that to happen. So there's no guideline, and it's also changes between company to company and where they are and what market is it and like what's the expertise of the founders. So there's a lot of parameters in play. There's no simple answer. But yes, you need to wear a lot of hats. You need to understand what are the hats that are very natural to you. Great, continue to do that. And then those that are unnatural, and you need to find ways as quickly as possible to help you with them. And when I say help is not, oh, I'm going to move my hat to the next VP. No, it can be, an individual contributor that's really good at that and push that. It doesn't need to be an executive. People think I'm going to put it on the VP of whatever and it's going to be amazing. No, sometimes, bring in a VP of sales when you have, I don't know, $500,000 of ARR is very bad because they don't know what to do. They need a machine that can operate, maybe a small one, so that they can make it bigger. They won't know how to create the machine, so to speak. And $500,000 is not a machine yet. It's just some sales that the founder did. So just as an example of why not bring in an executive. Same thing with the VP of marketing. Sometimes, depending on that VP of marketing, there's always, corner cases where an executive knows how to do everything from scratch, have done that maybe, or something similar from scratch, and would love to do that. Typically, by the way, if they're that kind of person, they will scale after 2-3 years, because then the growth requires different things from the company, as I'm starting to see, that are not what you need in the beginning, right? It's almost different problems to solve. That's maybe the quick, a long answer to a very broad set of questions.
Yeah. No, that's great. You covered exactly what I was wanting to get into there. And you talked about it over time, which I think is super significant. Our audience is people that are thinking about becoming founders, other founders who are new, who are looking for tips, and even CISOs and folks like that who just want to sort of understand the other side of the fence, if you will, right? And I think that's brilliant, because you answer the question not just for the short term or the immediate term, but also over time. And I think that's super vital, that the dynamic nature of a startup is such that rules that apply today aren't the rules that apply tomorrow. And I think that's a very important point to bring up. So the startup experience and hiring your leadership, you go through it. You find that you need different skills, and sometimes I think there's just sort of gaps, right? In other words, like you figure out you can wear these 2.5 hats, and you've got this other person, to your point, that you brought on that's really grown into wearing these other 2 hats, and you still have 1.5 hats left over. Do you find yourself having to try to hire that exactly 1.5 hat person, or do you sort of do you balance the workload across who you have? Like at some point, it feels like you get yourself in a corner where now you need someone with this exact and very strange set of skills, right?
I mean, also there's no straight way of doing this. I find that there's no templates. Almost, right? Let's say that 1.5 hat can be some of it taken by people already in the company without hurting the business. Do that, right? Especially if they will have maybe fun or challenge to also do other things. And it's a conversation with them. I never believe in, you need to own that now. Like, look, I have this, I need some help. Would more of a conversation, and that's also a management style and the people you have style or culture of the company. But yeah, try. Obviously, I'm also a believer in opportunistic people I find along the way, and many people that came were like, wow, he's amazing at that. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a function for that. But it doesn't matter. A startup always needs something. I can see how 70% is there, and then I'll find 30% to give him to do stuff, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so as you run across people, and it's like there's some fit here that's really, really beneficial, do it. And the vacuum of a growing startup will make sure that he or she they will find more work to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one and a half hat question, don't try to push it. I think it's called a square peg to a round hole or something
Uh-huh.
like that.
Uh-huh.
Like, try to just, if you find the right person that can take something off your plate, do it. If you didn't, try to distribute it or park it on yourself for now.
Got it. Got it. And okay. And that's where that sort of, it almost becomes a circle, right?
Yeah.
You find yourself after you finally get these guys hired and get it all humming. Now you're working more sometimes, and now you're working less sometimes as
Yeah.
you hire the next round.
Yeah.
Kind of goes in a bit of a circle as you grow and progress. And I love that model of your sphere with the surface of the company. Like that's a great way to think about it. And that ties into a kind of a question of, every cybersecurity startup fits into the ecosystem somewhere, right? And you sort of land and you expand and you grow and you're part of a giant cybersecurity world, right? Which is, it's an ecosystem. It's a technology ecosystem. It's a cultural ecosystem. It's a community of investors and purchasers. And so, where do you see yourself fitting into that ecosystem? And you can answer that both ways in terms of both technology, but also sort of culturally and impact to the community and those sorts of answers as well.
I mean, again, a very hard question. It's now more specific, I guess, but I think, well, the point is I'm biased
Yeah,
because,
sure, sure.
I'm soldier number one in my company. So I think we're doing a lot of thought leadership
Mm-hmm.
that I can give some proof. There's some receipts of being copied by many others in the industry on many things, and just approach of what we do, of stuff that we thought about, never no one thought about.
Mm.
And then others try to do some other things, even in other markets like us. So that's one aspect of that. I think culturally we're also, I don't know what others are doing, but I feel like we have found something that is extremely unique in terms of like how we're building our culture, our values, what we care about in terms of the company. And technologically, I think the industry is going into prevention 2.0. I
Mm-hmm.
think the industry started in prevention. This is like, say, 25 years ago.
Yep.
Perimeter firewall, antiviruses, stuff you assume you can prevent stuff. And then everything shifted towards, well, the attackers are inside, shit, like we can't stop them. Okay, let's have visibility and detection. And then
Yep.
all of the detection solution came along, and EDR came and won the detection game, in my opinion. And then recently, in the last few years, everybody now has an EDR. It's commoditized, and yet we're all being compromised, all the time, and so it's not helping. So now I think there's a theme again of prevention 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
and we are spearheading a lot of prevention controls in zero networks, and yeah, so that's how we're contributing in shaping the cybersecurity landscape, I guess.
That is a brilliant answer. You said it was a hard question. That was like just the spot on perfect answer to that question. So thank you. That was exactly the sort of thing I'm looking for. I think a lot of folks lose sight of where they are and who they are, and you get blinded by your own marketing and your own sales, and you're just like, we are this cool thing that does this cool thing, and you
Yeah.
lose sight of that bigger, broader picture. And you spoke to it beautifully, and again with an overtime answer, which I think that's so important to keep in mind. I think everything, morphs and evolves, not just for your company, not just for a startup, but for the whole industry. And I think you captured that beautifully. So thank you for that answer. Um, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about how you can get assistance from that ecosystem, right? People do the early stage design partnership. And eventually you reach a point where you want a customer advisory board. And maybe that customer advisory board is mixed up of, actual customers, maybe it's non-customers, maybe it's potential customers. So I guess two-part question. First one is when is the best time to sort of kick off that advisory board? And then when you kick it off, who do you choose? Who makes the best advisors?
So there's a difference between having advisors
Mm-hmm.
that some of them can also be CISOs and having a customer advisory board. Like you can unofficially have advisors that are potential customers or customers, and that you can ask them question on pricing, on the messaging, on the new campaigns you want to do, on features, on roadmap, like all of that good stuff. And then there is a cab. A cab is a big league play. It's not. You don't do that because it requires a lot of effort. It needs to be very structured. Like, just so we understand, we are just starting that now after 5 years. I don't feel that should start before. The amount of energy and time to organize those very structured meetings, what is the topic, engagement. I'm also a big believer of meeting physically and not just virtually. So making sure we have the budget to go and meet them in person or even fly everyone in a location to converse really deeply on any topic really. It's a lot of investment that in the early days, just have a few if you need to. By the way, we didn't need to do that. We have product experts. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but I'm a product expert in what I do, and we have others. So between us and with two early customers, we didn't need advisors, and we knew what we were doing. If you don't have the product expertise, you do need, in my opinion, you shouldn't open a cybersecurity startup, but let's say you did, you have to have advisors, and it doesn't have to be in the form of a cab. You just need to, they need to be in advisors, right, on the cap table essentially, and then you need to talk with them a lot without being too official. It's more fluid because the nature of the thing is that in the beginning it will be more fluid and just work like that. I feel that when you start to be in the hundreds of customers, let's say, then is when you formalize an official cap. That's my opinion. Obviously, maybe it's not right for everyone or every market, but that's how I view that.
I like that, and I love that you talk about informal advisors, like having just friends and allies from the practitioner camp. And having them help you long before you have a real cab. You've still got this body of advisors that are there to help you. I think that's a beautiful answer. And folks, if you want to learn more about Zero Networks, go to founderstories.tv/zero. Well, Benny Lakunishok, CEO of Zero Networks, thank you so much for coming out and chatting with us. This has been a brilliant conversation. I threw you some hard questions. You had some brilliant answers. I think this is going to be super valuable to all of our viewers. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, Alan.